He went from a walk-on at USC to a first-round NFL draft pick. What people haven't seen, though, what it actually takes for somebody to stay on the field. It's not as easy as people think, and I don't know that anybody's ever really pulled back the curtain and really talked about that. Your hamstring wasn't weak. It really just wasn't getting any help, and your glute wasn't doing what it should be. Surgery was not just like, a small surgery. I mean, you had to have your jaw wired shut.
Tito, for 3 meals a day, we would blend everything that I would normally have.
Both of us remember you rolling up with your jaw wired shut to come in and do a workout. That is an absolute dog thing. Just 3 weeks of just blending bacon and eggs.
I absolutely love the offseason because the anxiety, the pressure, the expectations, there are none. But as soon as you got to Green Bay, or as soon as I got to Green Bay, it was like, all right, like it's time to go.
It's game on. This is the BioMechanics Podcast. I'm your host, Tito Ramirez.
Manning has it knocked away by Matthews.
The ruling on the field is that it was a fumble. The ball was recovered by Green Bay at the 45-yard line.
On today's episode, we have a very special guest. He went from a walk-on at USC to a first-round NFL draft pick. Over the next decade, he became a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time All-Pro, and the all-time sack leader for the Green Bay Packers. He's a Super Bowl champion, and in 2024, he became a Packers Hall of Fame inductee. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us in welcoming our first guest, Mr. Clay Matthews.
Tito, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you reading off those stats. None of those would be possible without you, and I truly mean that. And that's why you were at my 2024 Packers Hall of Fame induction, because you were instrumental in keeping me on the field. But I appreciate you having me on today.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being here with us. We're taking you away from a typical Friday morning. What does that typically look like? What are we missing today?
Yeah, well, usually I try and get about 3 workouts a week, but today it's farm day. So, I head down there. Deer season's coming up. We got about a week. So just making sure the batteries are charged on the cameras. I've been leveling out. I got 2 new blinds this year. I've been getting some practice in with my 10-year-old, thinking about taking him out. I'm not sure, his mom's a little, is he too young? But it's almost fall, so football's in the air. It's hunting season, and there's always work to be done at the farm.
I love it. So we're dealing with Farmer Clay today.
Yeah, Farmer Clay, land management Clay.
Yeah, there you
go. Just a man of the outdoors.
I love it. Well, listen, your story is so well known. I mean, it's a family of football royalty. Your grandfather, your dad, your brothers, your cousin even. It's really unique and unprecedented, and it's such a powerful story that so many people have heard so many times. But I want you just to talk about that for a minute and reflect on that, because it's such an integral part of who you are.
Yeah, so I mean, it boils down to the fact that I come from a football family, and It started with my grandfather Clay Sr., played for the 49ers for a number of years, and then went off to fight in the Korean War. Then 2 of his boys, one of them being my father, Clay Matthews Jr., and his brother, Bruce Matthews, who's my uncle. Bruce Matthews played 19 years. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My father also played 19 years, knocking on the door for that Hall of Fame.
Yeah, let's go.
Two Iron Men who just did it the right way, or just badasses in every sense of the word. And then it's the next generation, the
Right.
third generation. So obviously I'm the third. I did my thing. My brother Casey was in Philadelphia and had a year with Minnesota. And then on the other side, Bruce's kids, specifically Jake, who's I just watched him the other night on Sunday Night Football with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he's in 12 and just printing money at the left tackle position. So yeah, and I think just growing up in that family, it's kind of what we've known. I think we all just, I would say, broad stroke statement. Usually a father is a son's biggest role model. So for us, and for me in particular, just watching my father, who worked on the weekends rather than Monday through Friday, I wanted to be just like him. And that wasn't always the case, coming up, being undersized. And as you had mentioned during the intro, being a walk-on at USC, that wasn't a guarantee, but it's what I aspired to be, what I strive to be. And I believe that kind of gave me the extra narrow-mindedness to persevere and to continue down that path, even when everyone said you couldn't do this. And so it's been phenomenal. I love the NFL and everything that it's given back to our family, not only the financial freedom that comes from it, but all the other opportunities. And now I've got 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and one of mine is just, he loves watching these highlights, and he's like, I'm going to play in the NFL one day. And I'm like, I know you are.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Are you struggling with chronic pain or trying to recover from an acute injury, or are you simply just trying to improve performance and prevent injury? I'm Tito Ramirez, and I've spent the last 20 years of my career building custom programs for athletes in sports. I want to bring that experience in professional sports to the population. If you'd like a custom program to help you achieve your goals, come visit us at BioMechanicsPodcast.com. I remember, how old is your youngest?
My youngest is 6. He's 6 now.
Yeah. So Landon, my son, who's now 16, he at that age was into clay highlight reels. Like, he was all in on those when we were working together, and he was a similar age, and he used to just sit and watch your sack reels, and he was all hyped about that stuff. So yeah, look, and you know what? I think what people haven't seen, though, is what it actually takes for somebody to stay on the field. I mean, it's not as easy as people think, and I don't know that anybody's ever really pulled back the curtain and really talked about that. I'd like to dial the clock back a little bit to 2014. To this day, the thought process is similar, but in those days, it really was prevalent that the idea around certain injuries were misunderstood, and hamstrings were one. And that was something that you had been dealing with 2012, 2013. And the prevailing thought at that point was that the hamstring injuries were rooted in weakness, and they were tearing because they were weak. And so we'd have conversations with teams about, how it is that this hamstring is occurring and how much hamstring strengthening was being done in the offseason and that kind of thing. And, your story is so powerful because there was a paradigm shift happening. There was more research coming out about doing biomechanical analysis to really diagnose if there was a movement fault that was leading to these hamstring tears. And I'd like to go back and talk about that a little bit because a lot of that research was actually coming out of USC, which is your alma mater. Dr. Chris Powers had cranked out, almost more research on that than anybody that I know of. Can you take us through just what you were dealing with up to that point in terms of the frequency of hamstring tears, the severity, the missed time, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I didn't pull a hamstring until I was, I'm going to say, overtraining for the 40-yard dash, getting ready for the NFL Combine. So after my senior year, I remember feeling something, and this was all new to me, and I was like, well, I'm going to keep going. And sure enough, I popped it. And, I got all healed up. I still ran it, did everything I needed to do and posted good times. But I re-injured my hamstring in, it was the first practice. This is so, as a first round pick, one that a team gave up 3 picks to draft. It was my first day in mini camp, and, play went away, and I go to explode, and I'm like, I feel so. I try to push through it, make it even worse. So we go to training camp that year, and I might have hurt it again in training camp. And fortunately, I made it through the whole year. Maybe I did. I'm not sure if I did or didn't that year, but enough to where at least 2 times in 1 year, made it through that whole season, felt fine. 2010 comes around, and I heard it in training camp like a week in, and then heal up. I'm back for week 1, fortunately, and about week 5, I have another little pull. I missed just one game, and then I come back, finish that season off. But to answer your question, it was regularly enough that it was at least once during training camp or some off-season training. It wouldn't be the normal, workouts we'd be doing. It was some type of camp, mini camp, training camp, but it was enough to affect, my preparation, getting ready for a season, because all my energy would be in rehabbing and then getting back on the field and playing catch up. And, fortunately, we touched on my family history. I felt like, I never felt like it slowed me down too much. I was able to kind of jump back in it, but I mean, who knows? If I didn't have to deal with any soft tissue injuries, how much further, I could have developed. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I met with, our doctors and our training staff. Well, how's your hydration? How's your sleep? How's your strength and your hamstrings?
Yeah.
And, I was just pulling my hair out to the point where, like you had mentioned, and I'm not sure if the listeners know that I brought you on pretty much full time, Tito. And that's where we changed the whole narrative of having weak hamstrings. But ultimately, I was just resigned to the fact that, okay, I have weak hamstrings. They're going to go out one time a year. How can we stay on top of it?
Yeah.
And that's where I was until, I linked up with you and brought you on full time to rectify, my quote unquote weak hamstring.
Well, and they weren't weak. And I want to talk more about that. You had been, USC had such good rehab. John Meyer was your PT, and I think so highly of him. He's great. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Dr. Chris Powers had been cranking out all of this research on lower extremity biomechanics. So you were kind of fortunately in this hotbed. And I had been trained by Chris in the residency and fellowship program that I did. I was very familiar with his research. And so when you and I linked up and really started talking about this and having these conversations, I think was 2013 in the offseason. And then we started together in 2014. And I remember talking to you about going down and getting this thing done with John. And I looked back in my email, I saw the test that we did. Do you remember anything about the test itself and the process, or is that gone?
No, I remember. You guys had me get down in my underwear and run with all these markers on. I think there was other high level athletes there. I didn't know I'd be stripping down.
Yeah.
But no, I remember seeing the email afterwards, and to talk about, I'd be doing a disservice, but it had the kind of connection points of, okay, your knee tracks with, your ankle here and your ankle and your foot. And I noticed that my hips, when I ran, it just was, I'm going to say symmetrical. Obviously you can talk about this a little better. It just wasn't correct, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And there was going to lead in time to some type of imbalance. And what we saw over the previous couple of years, some type of muscle pull.
Yeah, and look, I think that what you're really touching on is that it was an eye-opening experience for you, because you can kind of see these angles in real time. When we talk to as a physical therapist, when we talk to patients, when we talk to clients, when we talk to athletes, it's very difficult for us to really explain it unless you can actually see it. And I think there's so much power in an athlete seeing it. And I think that it not only drives a deeper level of understanding for the athlete, but it also allows the athlete to start problem solving. Like a guy like you is very highly intelligent, and I think you started to problem solve a little bit more too. And you could start to see okay, this isn't just some esoteric idea that these guys are talking about that's abstract and out of left field. These are hard numbers. And we did see things in that examination that directly correlated. I remember, some of the findings, we had limited hip extension. So your hip wasn't moving, your thigh wasn't moving back enough to really engage your glute, and it was creating a problem. So there was a mobility issue there. There was, in my mind, a very slight weakness. If we saw that weakness in the general population, it wouldn't manifest itself in anything, but in an NFL athlete that has that high of volume and that high of intensity, any weakness at all is going to get amplified. And I think we saw that in your case too. It was a very small, it was an 11% weakness that we saw. But as we go through this, I'll bring back some of your numbers after the training program, because they're really quite remarkable. So that was eye-opening. And I think that the next thing that I remember happening that I think doesn't happen enough in the normal, in the public domain that does happen in professional sports is that in pro sports, the rehab professional like Tito, you get like a rehab nerd, and then you get a strength conditioning coach, and they sit down and they're going to build one program for the athlete. And if I see patients, it's not, I have to like seek out their Pilates instructor or their personal trainer and like collaborate, and they're not used to doing that. Some people feel threatened, but in pro sports, that's the culture, And so you, me, Capretta, Sorensen sit down and we changed the offseason program to start addressing these deficits. How different did that feel for you to get all these bands, butt exercises, stretches? Like, did that really change the way you felt going through that offseason about your training program?
Well, I hated it at first, just because, the mindset of a professional athlete and a linebacker at that is just moving weight, loud noises, loud music with the bros. And then I go in there and we start an hour early, and we're doing what is it called when I hold one leg up? The
fire hydrant.
Fire hydrant. And we're doing crab walks, and we're doing 90s. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. And I tell you what, Tito, when we first started, I couldn't even do a fire hydrant with no band on. You have me try to hold it for a minute, and by the time I switched to the other leg, I would have to put the leg down, and maybe hopefully your listeners know what a fire hydrant is.
Yeah, we'll show them.
It's not a difficult exercise by any means, but with the remainder of my career in which we worked together, we got to a point where the black band, I believe, is the stiffest band, and we had at least one, if not a black and a purple on it, and I didn't have to hold against a wall to stabilize, and I just felt so kind of just stable and strong through my ass, for lack of a better term. But no, I mean, like, to answer your question, it was great because I started noticing, like I had said, I went there, and how you viewed yourself going into training camp after the off-season workouts was, okay, how much weight am I moving? How do I look? What's my weight on the scale? Body fat. But it's all those ancillary muscles that we needed to get into that maybe don't correlate to somebody's mental, image of how they're going to show up to camp. But that made a world of difference. And I found my health and my ability to stay on the field just continued to increase, and allowed me to recover from games faster and just kind of recruit those correct muscles when it was time to, during those, third, fourth quarter of a game when I'm, playing 90% of the snaps.
Right.
So I just felt like that was very instrumental in starting me down that path of doing the right things to make sure I can last a 16-game season, not have to miss a game or two for a soft tissue that would reoccur every year.
And, you hit the nail on the head. Really what we found out down in that lab was that your hamstring wasn't weak. It really just wasn't getting any help. It was working as a decelerator when your leg was swinging through the air, and then when your foot hit the ground, your hamstring was the muscle that was like accelerating your body over that foot, and your glute wasn't doing what it should be. So that's why you ended up with this, like, we're going to just keep hammering the brain butt connection, and that's really where that starts. And then you can start to strengthen the glute. And I do remember that first year pulling up to your house there in Green Bay, and you were, I don't know if you remember this, but you were shoveling snow, pushing the shovel up the driveway. And I got out of my car, and you're like, dude, all I feel every step is like glute, 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 glute. So, I mean, we've done so much glute work that you weren't feeling your hamstring with something. And that's like a daily task. You weren't out there trying to squeeze your butt or use a certain technique to shovel the snow. You were just shoveling snow, but you had this connection, brain glute, that it was actually firing that way. And I was actually glad to see that. So listen, one of the things I want to touch on too is that up to that point, prior to that, I should say, you were in Green Bay on your own, and we would work together in the off seasons. What was it that made you flip the switch and say, like, all right, instead of just having Tito in the off seasons, I need somebody with me full time? Like, where did that, because we kind of came together late. Remember that? Like right before the season started. Mm-hmm. What was the switch in your head?
Well, first off, Tito, I don't think we're putting enough emphasis on the fact that I was shoveling my own driveway in Green Bay. what a man of the people, blue collar. People probably think I had you out there doing it.
Yeah.
But
Listen, I don't know. I would have had to charge you more to do that.
yeah, you're right, actually.
You were just trying to save money.
Shoot, wait. Oh yeah. So as far as your question, I'm not sure, Tito. I think just if I had to go back and I think we started putting in more time in the offseason because originally, through my first, let's just say 4 or 5 years in the league, I looked at you as more of a recovery tool. Like, hey, I need some soft tissue work or massage, or hey, I've got my ankle's jammed up, so I need you to loosen. It was always like, hey, just to get me back to status quo.
And it was off-season stuff primarily at that point.
Correct.
Right.
And so when we started working with the bands and we started adjusting our workout, this was something where I think you probably had, hey, you should think about doing this during the season.
Yeah.
And I just, understanding the rigors of an NFL season, just knowing how I am when I get home, it's like, it's a lot easier when you have a personal trainer who's going to, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And it came together late. And it's funny to hear, Tito, I feel like we were on the forefront of this trainer athlete relationship because you hear these, and I'm glad this didn't come out before because I know LeBron talked about spending $1 million on his rehab.
I would have jacked the price up.
I got you a bargain deal for what we had, so I apologize.
Classic Clay.
But yeah, well, I got to make it last. These kids aren't cheap. But
listen, I get it.
But yeah, so I think just, it was honestly, it was one of the best decisions and thankfully you made to jump on board. Just kind of taking that off-season mindset of corrective exercises and implementing them in through the season, because the season is just a war of attrition, and you need that more than ever. In the off-season, it's great. You take 2 steps forward, but with the season, holy smokes! You're just trying to survive and make it, not only week to week, but day to day. So I think I just finally was like, this just makes sense. And if you look at it financially too, it still was a lot of money, Tito, but I think it's pennies on the dollar. This is what I would tell young guys as I got long in the tooth. I said, let's say, you're LeBron James and you spend $1 million on your rehab, recovery, whatever it is, to get you on the court. Your athletes nowadays, if you can prolong your career by just 1 year, the league minimum now is well over, I'm not sure what it is. It's well over $1 million. And I'm not saying a lot of these guys are spending $1 million. That might be excess or what LeBron needs, but he's making super max money, $50 million, whatever it is. So I look at it as pennies on the dollar. If you're investing in your craft, you're investing in your vehicle to keep you on the field, and your greatest ability. Oh, I'm blanking on it now. Well, it's availability. It's availability.
Yes, that's right.
And so by staying on the field for 16 games or now 17, that's only going to equate to more plays, more film, more belief from the coaches, and in essence, more contract and a longer career and a longer payday.
You get paid back at the end of it.
And that's how I felt about it. I thought I never, obviously, Tito, I was probably squeezing you left and right, so I apologize. But I looked at it, it's like, no, this is money well spent. I've got no problem because I know this man has my best interest in keeping me on the field, and this wasn't just some money grab from me.
Right. And I was all in. I loved it. I listen, I remember, because I had never gone full-time in season with an athlete before. I really, though, had a conviction that we were on the right track with the diagnosis that we'd gotten from the biomechanical examination. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember putting in that contract that if you had a non-contact injury, that I'd go home with no pay. Do you remember that?
I remember that. And then you
were like, Tito, don't get crazy. But I was like, no, I believe in this,
Hey, what year was that? 2014? I think we did all right that year.
Yeah, okay, so that was going to bring that up. You had an injury. I don't remember. It was somebody, I think, in New Orleans came down the line at tight end. You jumped in the air and they hit your knee, the inside of your knee, and your knees butterflied open and you tore your groin. Do you remember that? I don't remember who hit you.
I do remember that year because I had to wear those shorts with the bungee cords on them and just a pain.
I can't find those shorts. Those were magic shorts, man.
I think I got an A. If you need them, I got them tucked. They're tucked away somewhere.
They're linebacker size.
Because I was like, if ever there's a groin injury, I'm gonna bust them. I'm
Dude,
sure they're moss eating through them.
Those
but
things were great. But yeah, you that season was not without injury. You got dinged. Like that wasn't a small groin tear. It was sizable. I remember that it was a sizable tear. And the other thing that I think about too, because after you, I continued to work with athletes in season, and characteristically, or typically, the guys that bring somebody on like me are not guys that are half-assing it. And you, to that point, had not been half-assing it. You were in the gym. You were consistent. It wasn't like this was an issue of preparation. This wasn't an issue of weakness. You were there every day. You were doing what you should be doing. It was an issue of us just tweaking what was being done in that point. And then when you suffer something like a groin tear, you were able to play through it. But the base that you had through your pelvis and through your hips, like, there wasn't these huge motor compensations that you had that I think that we see now are prolonged injury, and it makes it slower. The recovery time gets extended if you have compensatory patterns going into the injury. You know what I mean? So I think for you, having done some of the corrective work on the front end can help you when you get something like that groin tear to just deal with that in and of itself, because that muscle actually works together with the hamstring, the adductor magnus does, and it works as a hip extensor. So if it's doing that double duty still, it makes it much harder for that muscle to recover because it's being used, overused as it's trying to recover. So yeah, you'd put in a lot of work that I think made a difference for you. Now, what was interesting to me was that happened right before the bye week. We tested you at the bye week. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
Wait, is that when we stopped by the Sunset Cafe and got those breakfast
Yes!
burritos down there?
Dude,
I do remember that.
Yeah.
You mentioned they had good salsa.
Yes.
And a Peruvian like yourself to say
Yes.
that, I knew I was on to something. I found a hole in the wall spot.
It was so good. I just asked somebody the other day that lives down there. I was like, hey, does that burrito place still open? And they were like, I don't know. I've never been there. And I was like, I got to go check that out. I got to go see if that place is still around. But yeah, so we tested you. What was interesting was that I was expecting that we would see a decrease in your numbers because we were halfway through the NFL season. You had just had an injury, and actually you had an increase. And I don't know if you remember that, but you had an increase at the halfway point. And not only did you have an increase in your torque and your power production, but your mobility numbers were up too. So some of this compensation that we were seeing in the running mechanics, specifically into hip extension and the trail leg coming behind you, had improved. And I was like, okay, we had gotten ourselves to a certain point before the season started, and now we're better. And he has this groin tear. So I was like, this is the right track. And I remember we tested you again at the end of the football season, and then we did it. I think one more time. The last time we tested you, Clay, the numbers that I saw were at over 150% strength for your height and weight in the muscles that we were concerned about, which, in my opinion, is what an NFL linebacker should have. Like an 11% deficit to having somebody that has, 50% more strength than they need, I think is exactly what would be required to protect the injured site. So, I don't know. Do you remember seeing those numbers?
I don't. That's failing. My memory's failing me on that. I can only remember breakfast burritos. I can't remember improvements in my overall strength, but I am happy to hear that. And I think, for me, it wasn't even I think it was good for you to see that.
Yeah.
And obviously for both of us to see that. But for me, I was living it. So I was feeling it. And that's why if I felt like us working together wasn't working, then I'd be like, hey, Tito, let's go our separate ways.
Yeah.
But that's why, for after the 2014 season, I was like, Tito, let's keep this thing going.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that. And I know at the time, you were so on top of it that I just kind of gave you my blind faith and was like, all right, what do we need to do?
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's another thing is like you were all in, and I've been in situations where I look back and I'm like, yeah, it really helps when someone is just all in, versus if they don't trust or there's some hesitation there. So look, that wasn't the end of the story for us. There was something in the running mechanics that was continuing to drive like a deep tightness. And, we continued the glute work through the offseason, in season, but the mechanics themselves were driving some deep tightness. Now, we didn't have blowout stuff happen, but I remember you saying there's just this deep tightness, and it wasn't something that I could palpate. You could feel it if you kicked your left leg out and like bent forward and turned a certain way. You could feel this deep pulling in there. And that's when we discovered dry needling. There was that guy in Green Bay. What was his name?
Dr. Mike. I think
Yeah.
Mike Last.
Yeah, he
I
was
still
great.
keep in touch with an
Do
amazing
you really?
guy, by the way.
Yeah,
he was the best.
brilliant, super smart guy. But the dry needling came in, and that made a big difference to that deep stuff because, for the listeners, if you haven't had dry needling or you haven't seen it, some of these muscle trigger points are actually sustained chemically. And if you can go in there and hit the knot with a needle, you'll release the chemicals that are sustaining the knot. The issue with somebody like Clay is that his hamstring is huge. His muscles are big. So some of these deep knots may be 4 to 6 inches away from the skin, and you just can't get there with your thumb. And even if you can, you're not going to release those chemicals. So the dry needling came into play. What was that experience like for you the first time you had that, Clay?
Oh, it was wild to say the least. So I've never been a fan of needles, first and foremost. And those needles, no matter how small they are, they're like 6 inches,
narrow but long,
even longer. And I'd get off the table after an hour of needlework and just be sweating bullets. But more so than that, I think the first time I had it, I got off the table and immediately felt worse. And naturally, anytime you have some sort of physical therapy and you feel like it's not working, I'm not getting better. You want instant gratification, immediate results.
Sure.
And fortunately, though, having stuck with it, 1 week and the next week, maybe getting it twice a week, I noticed that kind of feeling immediately thereafter kind of went away, and it wasn't real. It's hard to explain unless you've been dry needle, but it feels like you just did deep, let's say I'm getting in my hamstrings, you did deep squats, you did
soreness.
Reps, but I found that at practice the next day or in 2 days, all of a sudden, if we were doing high kicks, they were a little snappier and I could get a little bit more flexibility, and just staying on top of that. I know from you, when you would get in there, just manually or whatnot, like you could notice a difference. But for me, I felt it with, like you had mentioned, what I was saying was like a deep tightness. I just felt, I'm going to fast forward to year 11, my last year in the league. Just a simple drill that I knew it was working, it's specifically on my hamstrings, was those kind of those little flip kicks that you do, like in MMA, it would be like a teep kick or something. And I could flip it up there so fast, and it just felt so loose. Whereas early in my career, I couldn't get my legs straight, and it would just be bent, and I'm kicking it up, and it felt like I was going to rip my hamstring, and I'm like, smokes, I'm tight. So yeah, I mean, I did not like having it done, just because I'm a sissy when it comes to that stuff. But I tell you what, at that point in time, there was nothing more better, for lack of a better term, to get the results I wanted and to keep those adhesions and whatnot, to loosen up, to give way, to allow those muscles to be, to perform at maximum efficiency.
Yeah. And look, for me now, we're coming up on being a decade away from that, but I remember thinking, like, I got to go get training in this stuff. And I remember him telling me where he got training, and I went in and to the same spot, and those guys are fantastic. And, for listeners out there, if you haven't been dry needled, Clay hit on a couple of things that I think are very important. One is that there is some soreness after, and it's a very interesting feeling, because you're looser than you've been. Like Clay said, the next practices he would feel snappier. The athlete is looser, the muscles are looser, but they are definitely more sore, because we're causing trauma. When you poke a hole in the muscle, you're causing muscle damage. When we go work out and we push muscles, we cause a little bit of muscle damage, or a lot, depending on how hard you're lifting and how, it's going to make you sore. But the muscle will heal itself pretty quickly, and then you're just left with the muscle that's loose without that trigger point in there. And for my money, if you've got these deep triggers, there's nothing really like dry needling to address that. That was a big shift in my approach to these things, the way that I treat athletes now. Dry needling became a huge part of what I did after I saw how big of a difference it made with Clay. Okay, so in my opinion, what was driving that, and this will be the last point that we talk about here with the hamstrings, but what was driving that was the actual final thing that we had fixed in the running mechanics, that actually a Olympic sprinting coach that was with us at Proactive, Leroy, had identified, was that as you were running, you were still butt kicking, so to speak, like your heel was coming towards your butt. Take us through that conversation that you had with Leroy and the changes that we made moving forward.
Well, that happened by happenstance, just as far as,
oh, really?
Yeah, meeting with Leroy. This wasn't something I actively sought out because, mind you, I'm stubborn, I'm narrow-minded, and I've already had the success, Tito. Why would I change anything?
Right, right.
It's the mentality.
Sure.
But you once you let your guard down and your ego, go to the side, it's like, all right, something needs to change. We talked about that with, doing that the band work and whatnot,
Right.
and dry needling. But with this, for off-season workouts in Green Bay, we'd have to run 400s every once in a while. And, it's like a monkey jumps on your back when you get around that, 200, and I'm, 250 plus. So I was like, I'm going to get some work in the off-season. So I went to the local high school track.
Yeah.
Leroy must have been there coaching up some track athletes. And I ran one, and it was just me. And I didn't know how to pace myself. And I came in probably like, I'm making this up, but like 46 seconds and like a 400. Maybe that's some record, so I could be lying. But I collapsed. I literally collapsed on the track. I could not catch my breath. I was seeing stars.
Oh my goodness.
And Leroy comes up to me. He's like, and Leroy is so cool.
Yeah.
He's just like, you're running all wrong. Like, what
Did he
are
really?
you doing? Yeah, I mean, essentially that's what it came down to. And so I've always been a butt kicker when I ran. I had knee drive whatsoever. But like I said, I had a decent 40. I had a great 10-yard split. I've had success. I've never had issue. Like, who cares how you run? I'm fast. And
Right.
so anyway, I started working with Leroy, or I want to say Capretta perhaps he brought Leroy in, or I started working with Leroy on the side, and we just started at ground zero. And not only the exercises we do in the gym, but on the field, we first worked on high knees. And I remember I couldn't have my chest over my knees with high knees without falling backwards because I was so stiff within the hip flexors and hips. And long story short, I go through that whole off season, and I feel like such a goof learning how to run again, because I feel like, I'm standing up erect and my legs, and I'm just, I'm barely touching the ground, and I felt so uncomfortable. But then as I kind of looked more and more into it, and I looked at some of the cornerbacks on our team who had the same running mechanics, and then you look at, these guys in the Olympics or world championships running the 100 to whatever it may be, their mechanics are all the same. And those are the fastest guys in the world. So fortunately, within an off season, I was able to change just enough of my running mechanics by strengthening my hip flexors to pick my legs up and put them down accordingly, where I wasn't butt kicking. And I honestly, that was probably some of the best advice I got to limiting soft tissue pulls, and also just allowing me to talk about efficiency, operate efficiently, throughout the year. And a lot of times in football, especially at my position playing outside linebacker, I never really opened up like that. It's not like I ran down on kickoff anymore. I wasn't chasing anybody 50, 60 yards. But what I found is by training that way, by running gassers, by running 100-yard sprints in the offseason with that, what I'm going to deem the correct or proper running form, I trained all those muscles on, I believe, how they should operate. And I don't think, Tito, for the next 4 years, I had another hamstring strain.
That's 100%.
And it was remarkable. And I, of course, kicking myself, because now, it's always how it works in the NFL. And I'm sure in other sports too. By the time you have all the answers, by the time you see everything on the field, they're kicking you out the league for some young punk who knows everything. I'm sure somebody was saying that about me, but I felt like, holy smokes, I'd found the fountain of youth as far as how to limit soft tissue injuries, how to stay healthy, how to feel good for a 16-game season and not feel like, I'm struggling to get to the next week.
Yeah. And listen, it really, to me, this was a multi-factored thing. I think that on the front end of this thing, we identify these biomechanical faults, some strength issues, some flexibility issues. Those get corrected. But the running mechanics themselves had to be corrected at a very high level. You're dealing with a Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowl caliber NFL athlete, and as a physical therapist, I think sometimes people can they can start overstating things and overstep their bounds in terms of like, hey, you need to throw a football like this, NFL quarterback, or hey, you need to come off the line like this, Clay at linebacker. It's like that, not our lane. But having somebody like Leroy as a resource who's an Olympic level sprinter come in and say like, hey, look, man, like you need to drive your knees towards your chest and here's how you get it done. I think that to me, that was the icing on the cake, because the butt kicking stuff that was happening, I think, was driving some of these deep triggers that were requiring the needles. And I think once that changed, like now you had plenty of glute torque, you had plenty of hip range of motion. The muscles that needed to do the job could do the job. If you got your hip flexors involved and you were driving your knee to your chest, we were like, that just was like right over the top of the hill, and then it was all gravy from there. So that was a multifactorial, multi-year thing that I think now can get condensed. Now when I see athletes with something like that, that all gets condensed into one off season versus us spreading it out. Like, now I can needle somebody. Now we can clean some of those deep triggers out early. But the program that you are on is the same program. Like, we still pull out butt bands and we still go through the same sequence on that end of it. But I think the finishing end of it is where it would really change, where there's a lot more emphasis on hip flexor strength and driving your knee to your chest. So yeah, good lessons
Tito,
for all of us.
Yeah, to that point, I felt like my I never realized I had a deficiency in my hip flexors, and even doing bringing my leg up to 90 degrees and just holding it right there, I could just feel it getting tired, and it would fall down, and that's when the hamstring kicks on and you have those muscle injuries. By whatever year this was, once I started changing my running mechanics and I started strengthening my hip flexor, it got to a point where I could put like a blue 45-pound weight on my hip flexor and hold it for
on your knee when it was up
seconds. Exactly, at 90 degrees. I mean, it felt so strong, and man, it's also like, I know this to most people it might sound ridiculous, but it almost feels empowering, when you have that power within your legs and you have the proper drive, and like, all right, when I get up to full speed, like things are rolling.
It's over.
You've got the torque, you've got the speed, you've got everything, and you don't feel like you're rolling into something with a deficiency. I think there's something, the power of the mind
100%.
there.
I was just talking to one of my daughters about this. She's a volleyball player, and we were talking about confidence, and I was like, where your confidence is going to come from? Get in the gym and start working on mechanical stuff and start building your body up. And I guarantee you that 2 months from now, you're going to feel completely different. Like, your confidence level is going to get to the point where you just feel like, for lack of a better term, like nobody's going to be able to fuck with you. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, I got it, like bring it, let's go. Like, I've been putting in work. I feel good. So yeah, I mean, but look, that's a world away from, hey, this started with hamstring weakness, and this is going to take Nordics and hamstring curls and RDLs to fix it. I mean, but like I said, now we're much more efficient. And I think if you were going through it all again, it would happen in a more condensed fashion, but the tail end of it would look completely different in the gym, because as much as we were doing band exercises for fire hydrants and crab walks and the things that you mentioned, now there's resistive band exercises and trunk exercises with like overhead presses and resisted trunk rotation with active hip flexion and resisted hip flexion. That's become part of the program now, where when you were going through it, that wasn't part of the program. But the lessons that we learned with you, like, that did change. It does change what I do with athletes now, for sure. Because to me, that was the last thing, was that butt kicking thing that needed to get corrected, Okay. So look, I want to move forward to 2019 when you're with the Rams, because this is just an absolute dog moment. And if we're talking about pulling back the curtain, like I think we've talked about, you weren't somebody who shied away from the gym. You were there all the time. You were there consistently talking shit and working hard. But one thing that no one talks about when I see these interviews with you is, what was it, week 5? Who was the guy in Seattle that got you cleated in the face?
I'm gonna make this up. I want to say it was Chris Carson.
I think that was,
could be wrong, but yeah. So I'm gonna cut you off. But 2019, I'm playing with the Rams. I'm playing with Aaron Donald. So mind you, not since my rookie year in 2009, where I wasn't double teamed then, but every year after that, I was like, all right, hey, Clay's the guy we gotta focus on. We're gonna give him chips. We're gonna slide the line. He double teams, you name it. And that wasn't always the case. But when I went to LA, nobody gave a damn about me.
There you go.
And that was phenomenal, because I knew I could still play. And I think I finished that season in like top 5 rush rate win percentages. But that's because I was playing with such studs, including Aaron Donald. But I started off like gangbusters. I think I had like 5 sacks in 4 games. And I want to say it was either the fourth or 5th game. I lay out for a tackle and just bad luck. When this running back was kicking his leg back, it hit me right in the jaw, and it shoved my jaw back, and it broke in I believe it's the TMJ joint.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like a minute left in the game or 2 minutes left in the game. I tried to put my helmet back on. I'm like, man, my jaw is really hurting. And it's funny because I go home on the airplane and thinking, it's happened once before. You get your jaw, kind of lodged back, but the trainer, they didn't have an X-ray. Something was amiss after the game. They're like, no way you broke your jaw. You would know if you broke your jaw.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to go to workout the next morning, and I stopped by the doctor's office to get an X-ray, and sure enough, I got a broken jaw as I'm getting ready to go to the gym. But yeah, that was unfortunate, but
that was tough. And then that required surgery. And surgery was not just like, a small surgery. I mean, you had to have your jaw wired shut.
Yeah, I did. It was, as far as surgeries, it wasn't a painful surgery by any means, but it was probably one that was going to require the most coordination to overcome, because most people who get their jaw wired shut, mind you, we're in week 5 of the season. Season's just started.
Right.
And your intake of food is going to be so limited. So I'm not sure where you're going with this question, but I'm gonna tell you where I'm going with it.
Yeah, this is exactly where we're going.
So I think we bought a couple Vitamixes or shout out Vitamix, and Tito, for 3 meals a day, we would blend everything that I would normally have. So I'd put in 4 eggs, I'd put in oatmeal, I put in bacon, and with every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I would either add chicken broth, bone, or beef broth.
Worst shake ever.
I don't know how many ounces, but it'd be like 2 64-ounce cups. And you have to get it hot, though, because you have to drink it fast, because it starts to congeal and it starts to thicken, and you won't be able to be able to drink it. So I had to drink it fast just to keep my calories, and I didn't want to lose weight.
Right.
And I did this. I think my jaw was wired shut for 3 weeks before we took it off.
Whoa.
And so 3 weeks I maintained that. And then there was a smoothie shop in Westlake out there. And my wife would, she'd get like 6 packs of these all different types of smoothies, tons of calories, protein powder. And I remember just powering through those just to get my calories. And fortunately, after 3 weeks, I had only lost, I think, 1 or 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Through that. So not only getting that caloric intake, but also training too. Because I felt fine. I felt like I could train. And when they sent me on my way after surgery, they gave me a pair of wire cutters, because they go, hey, if you ever get sick, you gotta cut the wires in your mouth to be able to vomit so you don't choke on it. So it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I worked out when I was at the facility. We were doing the sled, the resisted sled.
Yeah.
And I had what's that machine, Tito, that pumps the
BFR machines?
Yes, exactly.
BFR,
blood flow restriction. Yeah. And so I had that on, and I was doing something. All of a sudden I finished, and I couldn't breathe. So I didn't have my wire cutters on.
No.
So I slowly went to like a corner, and I just I squatted down, and I just slowly focused on my breath, because I was at that kind of crisis of like hyperventilating and whatnot. And man, it was a tough one as far as getting over it. But when I came back after that, I was just like, all right,
I remember I was at the gym with Capretta and with Sorensen, and I remember us having this exact conversation, because this stuff was kind of evolving. We knew that you had gotten hurt, and we knew that you were going to get a picture taken, and then we hear the news, and that was the first thing, and like RC was like, dude, he's gonna lose so much weight, and I remember, and Sorensen and I actually just talked about this, I don't know, a few months ago. We were just shooting the shit about the good old days, and this came up, and both of us remember you rolling up to Proactive with your jaw wired shut to come in and do a workout with Sorensen and get some treatment with me. And I was like, dude, we started talking to you about this, and you're like, yeah, I just blended everything. I just put it all in the shake. And we were like, holy shit, that is like the most disgusting shake of all time. But you did it. And to me, that was like, I've seen some stuff in my career, but that's still right up there with anybody else's. Like, that is an absolute dog thing. Just 3 weeks of just blending bacon and eggs and oatmeal. And
I get bits of bacon stuck in between my teeth, and then something will get stuck in the straw. But yeah, I mean, dinner time, it was either I put a full steak in the Vitamix or 2 chicken breasts, spinach. I mean, I wasn't in it to make it taste good. It wasn't about that.
No,
and I
right.
think that's the mindset. But to that point, Tito, and you touched on your daughter being in the gym and having that mindset. And I know I'm kind of getting away from, what we're talking about with this podcast, but I think it's applicable to any athlete and whomever you're working on in this realm, is that mindset. And I remember, Tito, I do remember working out with Rock, because I was like, I'm fine. Like, I got to get this work in. I got to get these meals in. But I remember the Rams, they had played in Atlanta, and then they flew over to London to play a game. So I was on my own. They just left me, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I remember going over to the local high school, the same high school that I almost passed out on the track.
Yeah.
And I was running gassers and sprints, and I felt good. So I think it was after, a couple weeks where they had snipped, I still was dealing with some stuff, but I was able to breathe a little bit. And I called my wife on the way home. And she's like, how'd it go? And I had to remind her, I said, I'm an absolute dog.
There you go.
I was just like,
don't forget.
It's the power of the mind. And when you believe it, it comes true. And you have to have that. Listen, everybody else can think something else of you, but if you have that belief in self, and you go through these moments of duress and trial, you come out the other side just feeling so strong and so powerful about, your self-worth and what you do and the product you can put out there. So yeah, that was a tough, in the grand scheme of things, was it one of my, most devastating injuries? No. But what I had to do to overcome it, I felt like those 4 weeks of, blending food, dealing with, taking any hits, keeping my conditioning up, keeping my strength up, putting in extra time with Sorensen and Capretta. I came out the other side and I was like, all right, let's finish.
Yeah, no one's breaking me now. Like, are you struggling with chronic pain or trying to recover from an acute injury, or are you simply just trying to improve performance and prevent injury? I'm Tito Ramirez, and I've spent the last 20 years of my career building custom programs for athletes in sports. I want to bring that experience in professional sports to the population. If you'd like a custom program to help you achieve your goals, come visit us at BioMechanicsPodcast.com. That to me was just unbelievable. Listen, and it brings up this mindset thing, brings me to my next point, because, one of my favorite things about being at Proactive was it just always, to me, felt like when you guys came in, or when the baseball guys came in, or the basketball guys came in, it just feels like a locker room, with having that many guys in there, especially when, I don't know, there was a day in there that didn't start with you talking trash. And actually, there was a lot of days in there because your dad comes in. So your dad would start the trash talk at like the 6 a.m. group. That was
the old man group.
The old man group. And then, Big Clay would come in there and just start dropping knowledge on everybody. That guy is so funny. We got to get him on here. He's actually hilarious. But the idea that I'm getting at here is that there was this off-season feeling that I had with you where like I just knew you to be like, cracking jokes and talking shit all the time, and you and I had that relationship as well. But when I got with you in Green Bay, one of the things that really struck me was how much of a difference there was in you. There was just like, it was quiet, man. It was like so quiet. Like, I remember getting a text from you one day, and I was sitting at my apartment, and it just said, "Ready, Tito," and I texted back, "On my way," and I started scrolling up, and we literally had like 2 months of "Ready, Tito, on my way, ready, Tito, on my way." Like, there was no joking around. There was no shit talking. I showed up. It was quiet for our sessions, and you were always so kind, and it was like, "All right, thanks for coming, Tito. I'll text you on the time for tomorrow. See you later." And RC called me in the middle of the season. He's like, "Hey, how's it going on?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know if this guy likes me out here. Like, it is so quiet. Like, I don't know if I'm going to get invited back." And he's like, no, Tito, he'd been through seasons with athletes, and he was like, "No, dude, it's just the NFL season's tough." And I remember as soon as the season ended, you were like right back to your shit talking self. You're like, "Hey, bud, I'm going to the Pro Bowl. Well, this obviously went great. Loved having you, and we'll touch base in Westlake." And I was just like, oh, he did like having me out here. But there was such a huge difference. Can you talk to us about switching that flip? what do I want to say?
Flipping that switch.
Flipping that switch, yeah. In mindset, was that conscious? Was it unconscious? Was it survival? Like, what was that like?
I think it was just understanding expectations and knowing what's in front of me, and an understanding of what's to be expected, of what I've done in years prior and what I need to do, and the commitment that it takes. The off season is phenomenal. I absolutely love the off season because the anxiety, the pressure, the expectations, there are none. You are literally going to the gym with your peers and you're working against each other, but you can have a late night. You can, you may not have to eat perfectly. It's not always ball. But as soon as you got to Green Bay, or as soon as I got to Green Bay, it was like, all right, like it's time to go.
It's
like,
game on.
That's what it was for. The off season. And I don't mean to take this conversation in a different path, but I looked at a person's measure of success. Well, I mean, some people wanted the money, the fame, the girls, and then in the off season, it was Vegas, it was clubs, it was liquor. To me, it was all a singular focus, a single-minded focus of like success. To me, was not all that. It was playing at Lambeau Field with 77,000 fans who were cheering your name, and there's a jumbotron with your stats and everything. So for me, once I got there, I understood, especially growing up in a football family, what was expected of me.
Right.
And so me, like
the weight of that.
It was all business. It was all business.
Right.
I was there. It was a route. I knew every week was the same thing. Tuesday's my day off, but I get up at this time. I go in for rehab. I got my workout. I come home, dry needling.
Yeah.
Wednesday, it was this. Thursday, it was just you stuck with it because that was the only thing you could do. That was the routine. Highs or lows. And no, I think when you know what to expect and you manage expectations, I think it just allows you to, understand what's being asked and at least in football, play to your abilities. And I knew what I was capable of, and I knew, like I said, I keep touching on what was expected of me, and I had to be all in. And sometimes that I still would joke around with the guys in the locker room, but at the end of the day, it's like, all right, hey, let's get out quarterback this week, or let's make some play.
That to me, like, I had never been in season full-time with an athlete like that. And I think having you as the first athlete that I did full-time in-season work with was beneficial. And I've thought about this, and Melissa and I have talked about it so many times, that you were such a great first client for me to have. I learned so much through that process. But one of the things that really struck me was just the difference in how serious you got in season versus how you felt or how you conducted yourself in the off season. I was like, man, it's like a different dude out here. We're locked in for 6 months straight, and no one's messing around. Like, this is it's serious time. So one of the things I also wanted to talk to you about was, you're a dad now. You've got kids. You're playing sports. Like, what is it that? What do your workouts look like now? Like, we've talked so much about what you did through your career. Like, do you do a lot of the same exercises? Are you still fire hydrant in the corner of the gym over there? Are you running gassers? Like, what does a workout look like for Clay now?
Oh, I'm now a part of that old man group that my dad was part of back in California. But yeah, so I still have a private trainer. I like that one-on-one relationship.
So there's no group.
There's no group. And that's honestly, that's it's funny because, I relocated from California to Tennessee, and people say, how net upgrade in so many regards. But I say the two things that I miss the most are a lot of the restaurants we had in California, especially Mexican food. That's for certain.
There we go.
And a gym to train out, and not just a gym to train out, because I like the gym in which I train out. It's the camaraderie. It's working with people your age and working towards a common goal. Because now I work out, and I don't mean to disparage anyone, but a lot of the men and women are older than me, and it's just like the music is different. The vibe is different. So for me at this point, we kind of touched on this at the beginning. I'm so active outside. I've been fortunate. I've got a lot of acreage that we're building on, and I think psychologically being outside for me is it's been great in retirement, because a lot of people, they kind of, they lose once the roar of the crowd goes away. They don't know what to do. And fortunately, I jumped right into being a dad, having 3 kids.
Yeah.
Youth sports, but being outside, just staying active and then working out at the gym 3 days a week. But no, to answer your question, fire hydrants, if they ever ask me to do that, I absolutely not. I'm not doing that. Hey,
Come
I'm going
on.
back. I'm going
Game
back to high
changers, these
school,
fire
play
hydrants.
bench, squat, and clean.
Adam,
All right.
and curl. You got to curl.
Oh yeah. Actually, get rid of squat. Let's just do
Yeah.
curls and triceps. But no, I mean,
Let's be
Tito,
honest.
to the point. Obviously, I don't do as much as I was when I was working out with you and in
Right.
the off season. But I'm 39 and I'm almost 40, and I recognize there are some things that I'm like, hey, when you retired from the league at 33, 34, you can kind of skirt by with, but now it's like, okay, that left knee's a little sore, and I got that labrum tear.
Yeah.
It's probably time to get back. Maybe I need to bring you back on full time again, Tito, to come out here to
just feel good programs.
You don't need to train me for Lambeau Field. You need to train me for the battlefield that's called fatherhood.
Yeah. And listen, it's about like, I think sometimes the workouts can be like the goals change a little bit, but now it would just be about trying to stay in as good a shape as you can and feel as good as you can. Like you said, I mean, you finish an NFL career like yours, it's like you can just start checking the list. There's, shoulders, hips, knees, back, neck, the list goes on and on, ankles. And so a lot of that stuff is going to need some long-term management. But yeah, we can dial you in, buddy. That's not too big of a deal.
I need right after we get off, I need a program.
Listen, what we really need is I need to just find another 4 dudes to put with you that you start competing with, and then everything changes. As soon as we start you in a competition, your dad's the same way.
The testosterone starts coursing through the veins, that healthy competition. You're like, all right.
If you even had your dad and your brother, what about your brother? Where's Casey? What's he doing? Is he not working out yet?
He's like 20 minutes south from me. So the kids get together on the weekend, but he's got a buddy he works out with, and I pay for my guy at the private workouts.
We gotta get you a crew.
Here.
You need a crew.
But when we get to the land, we put in good work. But you're right, I do. I need a good crew.
You need a good crew. I think we get a crew for you. Then we're back in the game. I spoke with the people in Green Bay were so kind. I mean, I tell some of these stories over and over again because we met some great people out there, and we have some good friends that we're friends with to this day. And I called them up and I asked them, like, hey, what do you guys remember about Clay? Like, if I say his name, like you hear Clay Matthews' name, what sticks out to you? And I mean, the iconic draft moment is the most recent memory, and we started. That was so sweet. So we laughed about that, and then Adam, her husband, the husband was like, he's like, well, the Super Bowl, that hit is what I remember with him. We getting that championship and him being so pivotal. That was the memory, and then her memory cracks me. She's like, I remember him flexing and then using the water bottle on his hair on the sidelines like this. He had such beautiful hair. And I'm like, well, I'm sure he's in Tennessee right now. Just takes his cowboy hat off. He's got a mason jar instead of a Gatorade jar. He just pours it on there and goes out there to take care of his land. So, as you look back to our time together, what is it what really sticks out when you remember, the rehab time with Tito? Like, what are the memories that you have of that time?
Well, I obviously I'm always cracking jokes and whatnot. Tito, the first thing I think about is, and this isn't going to be a good visual for the listeners out there, is how by the end of our workouts, I'd be kind of like stripped down to my underwear because you'd be working on just about everything, and we'd be doing band work, and my wife would look in on us, and she would tell us
untimely.
It was bad timing.
Every time.
We'd be in the family room or something, so it was like, don't get those wrong images. But
yes.
She would just look over and be like, if I had a camera, or I took some pictures, like you two would be in trouble right now.
And she's witty that she was always getting us,
Well, yeah, she's a lot smarter than me, a lot here. But yeah, I know. I mean, I think it was instrumental on taking that next step in my career, and I only have fond memories, and I know. Obviously, talking to you in hindsight, the amount of stress you put on yourself for keeping, because of course I'm only thinking of myself here. It's like, oh, Tito's just here to help, but you're, like you talking about our commitment to you.
Yeah, I was feeling it.
And you, I mean, hey, I saw on this play. Are you okay? Just like you rode that roller coaster.
I know, I do. I still do. with the athlete I'm with
Yeah.
now, and I listen, I've tried to become much less annoying with the, hey, what happened here? How do you feel there? I stay much quieter now, but man, on the rehab side for us, um, I think there's athletes like you and other athletes that I've had, the one that I have now, that just make a rehab professional look so good. And then there's other times when you match up with somebody and they're just not quite as tough, you know? But look, I remember, one of the things that stuck out to me that's always just funny in my head is your home was always so quiet, unless, it wasn't ever chaotic. And I remember
That was before kids, Tito.
What was, yeah, but we know what I remember is that do you remember what we used to watch pregame? Especially on Sunday mornings. You remember what was on the TV? It was almost every, if there wasn't, because especially if it was an early one and there wasn't games on yet. Do you remember what we would throw on TV?
No, I don't.
Pioneer Woman.
Oh, yes. Pioneer Woman. Oh, I love those cooking shows.
I know. We
I'm
were all
lucky if
in
I get
on
to
that.
watch the TV anymore, but yeah, we needed something. I didn't want to watch the pregame coverage.
Yeah.
The anxiety and everything was going. So you give me something where I forget her name. She'd be cooking up like cinnamon rolls with some type of lard.
So
I'm
good.
like, oh, this is
Yeah,
what
we were all in
need
on
right
that. We were
here.
all in on that, man. So, okay, look, I'm so glad that you came on here. You can't go through a career like yours, see the success that you had, put in all the hard work that you did, and have that not affect how you're going to coach your kids up. And you talked about your son, your youngest son, who has an interest in sports and in football. As you start moving forward with these kids, are you coaching right now?
I am coaching right now. I found that my first year I signed my youngest up for flag football, and he had a positive experience, but I am the type of guy that just could not, I helped out. I didn't sign up to be assistant coach, but naturally the head coach was like, all right, buddy, like,
yeah, you weren't
let's
juice
talk.
box guy.
No, I wasn't juice box guy. I was a step above him. But then the next year I became I co-coach with another a gentleman who has actually a daughter on the team. But yes, and I kind of took over. So I've been with the same kids for about 3 years.
Oh, that's the best.
And it is nice because actually my father was just out here this past week, and he was talking about, working with us as youth, and every year you kind of build on where you finish at. But
yes,
it's when I coach these kids, and I'm not going to say I struggle with it, but I come home after a game and like a true coach immediately, oh, we sucked at this. We're never going to be good, this and that. And then, I immediately turn it around. I go, okay, how can I get better?
Yeah.
How can I reach these kids? What new plays can we put in? Right now I'm just teaching a kindergarten flag football coaching.
It's serious stuff, man.
The lessons I bring.
Yeah.
I believe there's never an age where you're going to say, okay, we need to flip the switch, because some might look at the way I coach these kids and they might say, wow, he's all he does is yell and all he does. No, I motivate. I tell the kids on the first day, I say, we are here to win. Okay.
Good.
We are to win. And the way we will do that, hard work, commitment, having fun.
Yeah.
We're not out there I'm not out there to babysit. And especially, listen, we've had 3 generations of Matthews men. If there's anybody who's got a real opportunity, and I know, like I said, they're 6 years old, would be, this 4th generation of Matthews.
Yeah.
So why not give them everything? But, we touch the line, we run to the line, we don't take shortcuts.
Yeah.
We practice how
the old
we
Michael
play.
Jordan story. Yeah.
And our team is we're very well coached, and I think we've lost 1 game in 3 years.
There you go.
And and of course I'm not going to take all that, but I love it. I love competition. When I first signed on to help with my son, they won a game at the very end. I told my wife, I said, I haven't felt that feeling since I left the game. And I was like, now that I can't do it, I love doing it through my kids. And sometimes I'm asked to coach my daughter's basketball team when
there you go.
Play. And so it's a lot of fun. And I feel like at this point, that's my way of giving back, not only to my kids, but the other kids as well. And I found, especially the fathers, the mothers love watching. I think they just come there to laugh at me because I'm always just losing my mind, throwing my hat down like I'm one of these old school coaches. But the dads, I think, love it. And I've received some nice texts, from them saying, hey, we appreciate your passion and what you're doing. And
you're all in.
And in today's society, we need more of that. I love sports. I think it is everything that sports teaches you is applicable to real life. And I just, there's never a right age to start at. And I'm absolutely loving it at this point of my
Yeah,
life, what I'm doing with my
I
kids
love it.
and friends and whatnot. So
Oh, that's
I'm enjoying.
awesome. Do you have them doing any like corrective stuff? Do you start to nerd out on their movement at all? And like, I mean, they're so young that, I mean,
They're
maybe your
so young
daughter, she's
right
older.
now.
How old is your daughter?
There's my daughter's 8.
Oh, okay. So she's still
Yeah, and
tiny
then
too.
my oldest is 10. No, there hasn't been really any corrective stuff right now. They're still kind of finding
Yeah,
themselves.
and that,
Watch my daughter's progression in
yeah,
basketball. It's still like, all right, let's work on the left hand,
yeah,
and so there are some kids where you can tell they're some studs at their age, and maybe they grew up in a sports family or grew up
yeah. They
playing
move
their
well young.
sport. But it's a little young. Right now, I'm just hurting cats.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I got a play card, and I'm like, I
Right.
need you boys to get
You
lined
got a
up and
play card.
play.
Are you covering
Yeah.
your mouth too in case they're watching you from the other sidelines?
Oh, all the time like this. Yeah, all the time like this. So their parents
Perfect.
aren't watching.
No, don't
Watch
give
what I
anything
have to
away.
say.
Don't give anything away.
Yeah.
No, listen, at that age they typically move pretty well. So once they hit puberty, then they become like, I always talk about like Great Dane puppies, like their paws get big and then they can't control them. So, as they go like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like they go through this stage of kind of awkward movement. So it may be that some of your rehab exercise stuff comes back to you at those times as you start to see them run, jump, cut, as they're going through puberty and just after and starting to feel like, because then that's about the age that they're going to start getting in the weight room too. And I'm sure that'll change. But I had a similar experience with my son Landon coaching his football teams, and I had the same group of kids. Started with him when he was in 4th grade, and then his buddies were in 5th, and it was like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and you just keep coaching. And we ran the same play, so it was like you just keep coaching the same kids over and over again, and it like I absolutely love it. And I know the feeling. I don't know if I was as intense. I don't think I'm tall enough to be that intense. I can't have the same authority as you did, but look, man, I am so grateful that you joined us today. And thankful for that, and appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today. Was there anything that we missed that you wanted to touch on that you were hoping to talk about?
No, I think, this is a side that hopefully for your listeners is just different from the normal questions. Hey, what's it like playing with Aaron Rodgers? And what was it like winning the Super Bowl? And what's your favorite play? Just to kind of get an inside glimpse of the work that's put in
behind the scenes.
For the most part, nobody cares about. They just want to see what's going on. But
they don't know.
For you to open the book on truly what goes into it, I think a lot of players and athletes are more than happy to share, because it looks bad when you're, I do all this, but I guess as I get back in retirement, I don't have to, nobody cares about me anymore.
Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of relive this and think about those glory days, and not what I did on Sundays, but everything that went in.
It was 7 days a week. It was 7 days a week. And this is after practice. Like we had a routine and we did the same thing, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They were all the same, but it was 7 days a week of extra time that you put in, and nobody talks, like you said, nobody talks about it. I've never seen anybody talk about, with you, what you had to go through to get, and look, to rehab your hamstring, to get it diagnosed correctly, to change the mechanics and the training programs and bring somebody like that's a lot of commitment from an athlete to really do every possible thing that they can to stay on the football field. And I think a lot of it is the work ethic that you had. Your dad is such a good dude. You had such a good family, such a good example. And obviously that was instilled in you and it made a big difference. But I am very thankful to have had the opportunity to have had that time with you, because like I said, I learned through so much of that, so much through that process, and having you as a good first client, it was so much that I appreciate. It was a serious, like, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to just be buddies and hang out. Like, it was actual serious work that was being done. And it made a big difference. I think that that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be serious. I wanted it to be about correcting mechanics and sustaining these corrections. And I wanted to test my own ideas that I had in my head. I believed that if we changed these mechanics, that we could sustain these changes in season if we stuck to a workout plan, if we stuck to, what needed to be done. And for me to see your numbers improve through the season, for me to see the kind of work that it took, and to be with an athlete like you the first time through the process that was like, 7 days a week, man, we go 7 days a week, extra work. That's a testament to who you are. So thanks for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. Please give your best to your family. Your dad's still around here, isn't he? Local?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
still
I need to go
local
find
right
that
now.
guy.
I'm trying to get him to move on out to Tennessee, but they've been in California for so long. They know the restaurants.
Yeah,
They
I
like
know.
it.
Well, he
But
needs a group too. Your dad is like he needs a group of people to work out with too. If he found a group of dudes his age out there that were just slinging some weights around, that might
hey,
tip the scale.
I'm in the old man group now too,
Oh,
so
man.
I'm right there with them. We can start that group. But now, Tito, I appreciate you having me on. This was fun to go down.
Yeah, it was.
And
Love
again, in a different avenue that I don't normally talk about, not because I don't want to, but just because nobody. But I know you obviously do. This is your livelihood, and I know your listeners do as well. So this was a lot of fun, and
Thank you.
And I appreciate all your work, throughout the years. And
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I wish I know you're still at it with your current client, and hopefully it continues on and on. And we'll see if it's we'll see where this ends.
Yeah.
But right now,
it's a fun ride.
Now it's looking good, Tito. It's
Yeah.
looking good.
We got our finger. You know how it is this time of the season. We're always like, all right, we got a shot here. Like things are looking good. So yeah, we got fingers crossed. But like you said, I'm sitting at home stressed out about making sure everybody stays healthy. So that's the deal. Still living in that world. But well, thanks again for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And hey, next time you come out here, we're going back down to get some burritos. We got to see if that place is still open. And if it is, we're going to go crush them.
On you though, right, Tito? Because I got tight pockets. All right, I got tight pockets.
All right, I'll buy you a burrito. We'll get that done.
All right, I appreciate it, Tito.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Take it easy. We'll see you later.